Lacey Fletcher could probably hear them packing for their New Year's trip. They're going to celebrate ringing in 2022 by going out of town and leaving Lacey to rot by herself. It's hard to say if Lacey felt relief in that moment knowing that they're going to be gone, or if she felt fear, because what if they don't leave her food? Would she just starve to death? What if they didn't leave her water? You can go longer without food, but not water, right? Just a few days. What if they don't even come back? What would happen to her? Then all she could really do in that moment is sit in that chair and watch them leave. I mean, what other choice does she have? She's trapped, unable to leave her prison, unable to see the sun. Lacey can't walk outside. She can't talk to her friends anymore, go to school. She's not even able to walk into the kitchen to grab food whenever her stomach rumbles. We don't know if she even knew what day it was, or if she could hear the New Year's Eve fireworks. Would she work it out from the fireworks that it's 2022 now, or would the loud noises just terrify her? We don't know any of this for certain. We just know that Lacey Fletcher was a prisoner of the couch she had been left. They're hungry, covered in feces, naked, unable to eat unless one of them decided to bring her food. Her body was dying while she was still alive. There were parts of her flesh that were rotting. There were maggots crawling in and out of her hair, in and out of her bones, munching down at her dead flesh. And she's still alive. If she looked down, there would have been certain parts of her body where she could see straight through her skin, her tissue, her muscle, and see her bones. There were giant holes all over the lower half of her body. She was completely covered in feces. There was feces in her stomach, inside her stomach, in her mouth, and even her ears. She'd been trapped on this couch for the past 12 years of her life. By the time that she was found, she had melted through the couch into a hole, and her skin was fusing with the brown leather. The only contents found in her stomach would be cushion, foam, and feces. Did she eat it out of desperation? Was she fed it? We don't know. The worst part is we're still unclear why any of this happened. There are theories that range from locked-in syndrome, where someone is fully conscious but unable to move their bodies, trapped inside their own mind. There are theories of full-blown torture, with Lacey being a victim for someone's sick, sadistic pleasure for over a decade. There are a lot of wild theories, but we have no definitive answers. All we know is Lacey Fletcher would die in one of the worst, slow, torturous deaths imaginable, and nobody helped her. As always, full show notes are available at Rotten Mangle Podcast. One of our wonderful researchers that worked on this case is autistic, and she was instrumental in the process of gathering data for this case. She's also provided us with links to autism resource pages that will be in the show notes. Now, with that being said, as with all cases, please let us know if you have any thoughts or any additional details about the case down in the comments. And with that, let's get started. There's a very rare condition out there. It's called locked-in syndrome. Less than 1,000 people in the United States have it at any given point. Most sufferers are victims of a stroke or a traumatic brain injury. And even though it's a very, very rare condition, it seems to be a big fear for a ton of people. I mean, maybe it's the nature of the condition. Maybe it's because of the natural human fear of not being able to communicate with one another. It's terrifying, and it's exactly how you picture it. Locked-in syndrome. You're awake, your mind is flowing, it's going a million miles an hour. If you're lucky, you can open your eyes and look around, see what's around you, but really only as much as you can move your pupils. That's it. When you try to talk, nothing moves. You can't push out the words. It's like when you're in a dream and you're trying to scream for help, but no words come out, and you start getting so flustered and frustrated with yourself. But you wake up and you realize that's just a nightmare. This is locked-in syndrome. You can't even move a single finger. You can't even swallow your own saliva. And soon drool is going to be seeping out of your mouth, while doctors and loved ones look at you, concerned, worried, because they don't know how this happened. You're trying to give them a sign of, hey, I can see you, I can hear you, I'm here, but there's nothing that you can move. Your body is locked, and you are locked in your brain. 90% of people die within the first 4 months that they're locked in, and a lot of doctors can figure out that they're locked in, but can't find a way to get them out. One survivor of locked-in syndrome stated, my cognitive capabilities were 100%. I could think and hear and listen to people, but I couldn't speak or move. The doctors would just stand there at the foot of my hospital bed and talk like I'm not in the room. and I just wanted to scream like, hey people, I'm still here, but there was no way for me to let them know. He remembered hearing the doctors tell his family in the room that he had a 2% chance of survival. And even if he did survive, he would be completely comatose. He remembers hearing the conversation and seeing his wife break down and beg the doctor to not turn off his life support machines, and he was just screaming, no, I'm right here, don't turn it off, I'm right here, but nobody could hear him. He couldn't move his lips, he couldn't move his mouth. Another survivor said I could do nothing except listen, and I could only see the direct area in front of me based on how the nurses would position me in bed. So if they flipped me over to the left, I could only see that point of the room. He reported that he could feel every jolt and twinge of pain. He could even feel itchiness. You know, you have that itch in your back. He said it was miserable. He's in constant pain, but he's completely at the mercy of his doctors for pain meds. And this is a miserable way to live, but there's no choice. You don't have the choice of exiting your life or telling someone, hey, I can't do this. He said I couldn't tell anyone if my mouth was dry, if I was hungry, if I had itch that needed to be scratched. I felt disgusting all the time. I was constantly drenched in sweat. My skin was so sensitive to minor sensory changes. It felt like it was burning all the time. It felt like it was on fire. He was in constant pain. He was afraid of dying, and that's all he could think about all day. But worse than that, he was afraid of being trapped inside of his body. Forever, all he could do is talk to himself. He said he had to create another voice to talk to himself, two voices. He could calm himself down. He would say things like, how are you doing, Jake? Not too bad. Just waiting on my meds. It's coming soon. Don't freak out, Jake. You're going to be okay. When Jake wasn't talking to himself, he was talking to the nurses. They just didn't know it. They would ask him, hey, Jake, can you hear us? And he would be screaming at the top of his lungs, I can hear you. I'm right here. But nobody could hear him. And the highlights of his day was when nurses would come in and talk to him, even though they had no clue that he was, quote, in there. The ones who sing to him were his favorite, while they would flip him over. They would sing to him, but most of the days he would just lay there in a completely empty room, unable to move. Sometimes his family and loved ones would come over into the hospital room, and they would just scream at each other about what they were going to do with him, fighting about him. As if he's not right there listening to all of this. That's terrifying, yeah. There's no way of these people, there's no medical equipment that can detect that. I think right now fluttering is the quickest way that doctors will detect it. It still takes about a few days for them to even find out that you're locked in, yeah. So most of these people, these survivors, they said it took multiple days for the doctors to be like, oh my gosh, I think he's blinking, like please blink twice, if you can understand what I'm saying right now. Wow, I mean, I can only imagine. There must be so many who couldn't control their eye movement either, so we don't know just how many of people have passed while they've been locked in. We're not sure, and once they're locked in, they remember everything. These survivors, they remember everything in detail, and they were cooperating it with the nurses and doctors, so it's not just like hallucinations that they had. These are real events that completely conscious. There is a device right now, I think, that they're working on where it can try to communicate with you through your brain. Listen, that's what I was thinking. Don't. Is there so many like brain scans? They can check like what area is moving and stuff. I imagine it's very expensive. Right, there was a man in France who wrote a whole book just by blinking one eye to someone who was transcribing it. And then he passed almost immediately after it was published. Jake said other times he was so bored he would just count to 1, 0, 0, 0, and then start all over again, 1 to 1, 0, 0, 0. It was absolute hell. He felt like he was being tortured. He always wanted to know what time is it, what day is it, how long has it been, but he can't even ask anyone. And then there's just so many depressing thoughts in his mind. There were days where all he thought about the entire day was his own funeral, who's going to show up, what it's going to look like, who's going to say what. For Marsh, the other survivor, he said he was really lucky. His wife and children were there all day, but even that was just lonely. He said during the day, I was lucky. I never spent a single day when my wife and one of my kids wasn't there, but once they left, it's lonely, not in the way of missing people, but loneliness of knowing there's no one who really understands how to even communicate with you. Marsh and Jake were two of the lucky ones. There were rumors last year in 2020 that a young woman in Louisiana, was not as lucky that she had been locked in her own brain for the past 12 years, and all she could do was sit on the couch and stare at the wall until she passed so in 2022. This story goes crazy. It's a horrifying story that's coming out, but it was made even more terrifying by the fact that woman probably didn't even have locked-in syndrome. So what does that mean? Why would someone sit there on the couch for 12 years? She's able bodied. Why didn't she get up, Al? So she's not chained, no, or trapped. We don't know, so that means if she's not locked in, there is something worse, more sinister, that made her unable to move from the couch for the past 12 years of her life. Slaughter, Louisiana has a population of less than 1,000 people, but it does have a very interesting name. They were briefly part of a small internet discourse because of their unfortunate police department name. Slaughter Police, yeah, so not great from a marketing standpoint. And there was this question of why the hell is there a town named Slaughter anyway? There were some rumors that the area had some of the first slaughterhouses in Louisiana, or that something very ominous happened. They're giving it the name Slaughter, Louisiana, but it's actually just named after the original owners of the land, Mr. Will and Joe Slaughter. But it's a very, very, very small town, less than 1,000 people, about 800 people. And it's the type of place where you don't have to leave the town for anything. There are schools, churches, pharmacy, food, marts, small businesses that sell farming goods, a rehab facility, short and long-term care for the elderly, and even though it's the definition of rural, the houses are super spread out, so you can have as much privacy as your heart desires. Slaughter has that small town comfort where you're like, okay, my dog is missing, guess what, likely all 800 residents are going to come out and help you search for your dog until they're back home. It's just one of those towns. I mean, they even have like a small government with residents voted in as what they call aldermen, and the aldermen will help vote on issues affecting the community. So the aldermen, they're supposed to be approachable figures of community that you can turn to for literally anything. Like if you have a disabled family member and you think there needs to be better accessibility at some part of the town, you go to the alderman. If you think your job that has nothing to do with the government requires better sexual harassment policies, like you work at a fast food chain, you're like, you go to the alderman. Even if you have a deeply personal issue where maybe you have an anxious relative who won't leave the house and is becoming reclusive and is not socializing with anyone, you go to the alder. They literally went to the alderman for anything. Sheila was probably the best alderman to go to. She was also the vice mayor of the town, literally was V.Ed into that position. So if the mayor couldn't attend a meeting, Sheila would show up in place of the mayor. Her husband Clay was also well known in the community. He worked for a nonprofit called the Baton Rouge Civil War Round Table. They would organize events and field trips to historic sites to, quote, provide nonpartisan atmosphere to foster learning and respect for our Civil War heritage. It's a lot, you know, there's a lot of red flags, and some of the members joining the official Facebook group would post, quote, non-judgmental pictures of the KKK and make racist jokes about the Obamas. So I don't know, it doesn't seem like Clay was the one personally posting those or endorsing that kind of activity. But just to give you preface now, Clay and Sheila, they're the go-toss for the community. Anyone's got a problem, you go to Clay or you go to Sheila. They're churchgoers. They've got the mindset of wanting to help others. They would probably help you first with your oxygen mask on a plane before putting their own on, always asking, how's your day, how's your sick grand? Ma, well, if your grandma needs anything, just give us a ring. We're right down in the street. But who asks how Sheila and Clay are? Robert Blade Center asked. He lives across the street from them, and he remembered the couple having a young daughter, and he hadn't seen her in like, geez, I mean, God knows how long, right over a decade for sure, maybe like 15 years ago last he saw of her. She was exercising down the street, running around with some dumbbells in her arms. I mean, she did that lot, and then she stopped one day. He just kind of assumed, like all the other kids in the neighborhood. Though she got into college, moved into the city, met a boy, got married, started a new life, and then never found the time to visit small old town Slaughter ever again, right? Or maybe she did, and he Always missed her. I don't know. She just looked like a young woman. She had these little, what do you call the little weights that you hold in your hand, the little dumbbells she was exercising. Yes, she'd walk from her house around the circle. And she used to do that, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a week. So one day, this daughter would have been about 30 years old at this point. Robert was on his front lawn, talking to Clay about things going on in the neighborhood. And he thought to ask, oh yeah, Clay, how's Lacey? How's she doing? What's she up to now? Moves away. Oh, no, she's still here. She still lives here. She's fine. Clay quickly changed the subject at that moment. It was very likely that Lacey was unable to walk, fused to the couch, trapped. And death has a smell when the body starts to break down and decompose. There are over 800 chemicals that react with the air and with each other, and it creates a very distinct scent. And we always hear about it in cases the investigators could smell death, that it's the scent that once you smell it, you can never forget it. And to a degree, I feel like we can all kind of imagine what it's like. I'm sure it's not pleasant scent, but people actually say it's more than that. It's really distinct. It's not just the worst scent that you've ever experienced. There's so much more to it. Death has a sickly sweet scent so underneath the smell of fecal matter, waste, decay, like you would imagine a piece of raw steak left outside in hot, humid cabin air would smell like after 3 months in the summer. It's like that, but underneath it there are almost these sweet notes. Everyone describes it differently. I went down a lot of forums with a lot of coroners and crime scene investigators, crime scene cleanup crews. Some describe it as a thick, it's almost like it hangs in the air, like this thick honey scent underlying this rotten meat, garlicky feel, matter scent. It's like honey, but you want to throw up. Others say no. It's almost a little floral, like when you are around flowers that have a very unique scent, and you almost want to gag, kind of like that. Some say actually it's that almond, it's that sweet, almost kind of nuttiness. And then there's that overpowering, fishy, even sour scent that overtakes it all. One Redditor, an EMT, describes it as smells like if you left cheese out in the hot sun for a week, and then you put it into a stale sweet tea iced tea mix, and then you just let it sit in that mix, hot ice sweet tea mix, for another week, and then you smell it. It's actually even thought that humans and other animals evolved disgust for the scent. So the main underlying scent is called putri, and it's the chemical compound associated with decomposing bodies, and apparently humans evolved into being so literally primitively disgusted by it because it protects us from disease and predation from scavengers. Studies go even further to suggest that it triggers a fight or flight response in humans. Just smell of a dead body, even if you don't know it's the smell of a dead body, you smell it way out in the woods, you have a fig or flight response. That's what some people believe, and there is a company out there that just recreates the scent of human death. That's their whole business model. Scent of human remains, and they sell a formulated version of it. And to put it simply, they bottle up the scent of human death and sell it. The website describes it as, quote, represents odor of 140 lb cadavers for the low cost of $850. And it's not for any weird, sinister reason. Well, hopefully, that's not why most people are buying it. It's mainly used by cadaver dog trainers so that they don't have to use real human remains to train cadaver dogs to find dead bodies. But there's actually a lot of cadaver dog trainers that don't like to use these scents. They'd rather go to a body farm and purchase body parts because they argue it's just not the same, like you try to replicate it with the chemicals that is created from decomposing bodies. But it's so difficult to replicate the smell of death. Precisely, it is such a unique scent. I mean, there's so many variant factors. The scent depends on the person that died, the surrounding conditions, is there wildlife, or the body, is the temperature, the humidity. They said humidity is the worst on a dead body, and Slaughter, Louisiana was a humid, hot town. I'm not sure how much Dr. Brickham knew when he drove up to the little White House on January 3rd, 2022. I wonder if the neighbors' Christmas trees and all the New Year's decorations were still up, making the drive feel, I don't know, even more eerie, right? But once he parked that car, he gets out, he walks past the well-manicured green lawn, he opens up the front door, and it's like he's hit with this invisible force field. It's a smell. He couldn't breathe. He said there was a stench and odor feces feel matter your. And you couldn't hold your breath. Dr. Brickham had smelled death before, but this smell, it's literally embedded into the fabric of the house. That's how thick and pungent it is. It felt like the scent was going to follow him home and linger for weeks. Dr. Bam enters the living room, and when you spot something that just feels out of place, it makes you feel very unsettled, like you can't quite put your finger on it. But it just feels weird. Imagine it's snowing outside and there's someone standing there out in the snow staring at your house with nothing but their swimwear on, and you're just looking out the window like, I feel like this is odd, like yes, I'm worried that they're going to get sick, but there feels like there needs to be a sinister explanation for this because it's just that out of place. Dr. Bickham walks into the living room. Most of the living room is pretty tidy, a little clutter like any normal house, but all over it was pretty well organized. I mean, it's pretty evident that someone in this house is maintaining the living areas, making sure that they're always well kept, cleaning up, organizing everything except the couch in the center of the living room. The dark brown leather couch was the source of this smell, and Dr. Bickham had been hit with it when he walked into that house, and he could almost see steam like emanating from it. Couch looked like it was melting. The couch was soaked with urine and feces, human excrement. The waste was seeping through the couch bottom onto the floor, where it looked like any second the floor. Nobody cleaned the floor underneath the couch. It looked like the floor was going to crumble in on itself. From the gathering of all the liquid and feces, there was an 18-inch gap between the couch and the wall. The wall looked moist, like it looked like there would be condensation drop like on the wall from steam from liquid. And the couch just looks so out of place. I mean, you wouldn't even expect to see this type of couch in an abandoned home. It looks like a regular normal living room. And then they just have this couch that everyone in the family and visitors go and pee and poop on. And then nobody cleans it up. That's what it looks like. And it's just melting. It's like a weird time capsule. Just the couch is rotting. It's bizarre. And this is the living room of a couple that's pretty well respected in the community, in a house where the rest of the place is extremely well kept. And there are signs of life, and this is the couch that's in the center of the living room. But as Dr. Bickham got closer, he found who he had come here for. Lacey Fletcher was laying in the living room couch. She's not laying on the couch, she's laying in the couch. There is a huge person-sized hole in the leather couch, almost to the floor, I would imagine it. And there are pictures. Just imagine your dog gnawed through all of the sofa cushion fluff, and there's just a hole in the couch. She's literally in the couch. She's slumped to one side, sitting cross-legged. Her eyes are wide open. Her mouth is wide open. She's completely nude except a small blue pattern top that's pulled over her chest, so her chest is bare. What Dr. Bickham could see her bones, not because she was that emaciated, which she was very malnourished, but parts of her body had been rotten and eaten by maggots while she was alive. I mean, just think of the mental trauma for someone who would be alert and aware if they were to look down and see their own flesh being eaten by maggots. There were maggots crawling in and around her hair, all over her body. She was covered head to toe, and feces, it was found in her mouth, in her stomach, in her ears. She had been eating it, or she had been fed it. We don't know. The sofa arms were covered in scratches. This is not a situation where Lacey's body was left on the couch to decompose after her death, and the feces and urine, it came out during the decomposition process. This is not that situation. Lacey was kept alive on that couch for 12 years. She had been alive for 12 years, not able to get up to even use the restroom. She had been soiling herself, and then either eating or being fed her own feces while being trapped on this couch for 12 years. Her flesh had been rotting while she was alive. Maggots were eating away at her while she was alive, and she had just recently passed away. And the two people who lived with her, her parents, the ones who walked past that couch every single day, walked past it to head into the kitchen, to the garage, to the backyard, Sheila and Clay Fletcher. They were now standing in the kitchen with no explanation on what the hell had happened. When I first walked in the house, it smelled of feces, fee material, however you want to put that politely. It stunk. When I got to the body the individual was basically sitting in, in a hole filled with liquid stool and urine. I was able to place her body in a black body bag, and I took it down to Jefferson Paris for autopsy. It's the worst form of medical neglect I've ever seen. I don't know any other adjectives or adverbs to add to that. Lacey was pronounced dead at 3:07 p.m. on January 3rd, 2022, but it's likely that she passed away at least 24 to 48 hours prior. She could have passed away New Year's Day 2022. The world around her would have been celebrating the start of a new year, something fresh, and Lacey would have been laying dying in her own excrement. Sheila Fletcher got a little bit more talkative at the police station, and side note, this isn't even immediately after authorities took Lac's body away. Sheila was interviewed January 18th. Lacey's body was found January 3rd, so the police didn't do anything until 18th. They really did not treat the parents like persons of interest or even suspects. It's a small town, right? So they all know each other. And now Sheila tells authorities January 18th that Lacey had social anxiety and had met with a psychologist over a period of 3 years. When she was back, a teenager, Lacey was 36 when she passed. So you're talking about like decades ago. Eventually, she stopped seeing her doctor decades ago. Sheila and Clay contemplated getting Lacey committed into a specialist medical facility, but for whatever reason that never happened. In the interview with the police, Sheila insisted that Lacey refused to leave the couch. It was a personal choice that she made, so she and Clay, they did their best to accommodate her on her wishes. Like they set up a toilet for her, like one of those portable toilets that you see at hospitals. They put it right next to the couch with some baby wipes, baby powder, a fresh change of clothes, a stack of Lacey's favorite movies to watch. They were all there. All Lacey had to do was get up. But she didn't never want to leave the coo, ever. That's what they said. Maybe it's laziness. So they gave Lacey a towel on the couch to use as a toilet. Sheila stated that she would have to take towels from Lacey, the ones covered in feces, clean them, and then bring her new towels. It was a whole thing. Sheila also stated that she would have to clean Lacey's body and bed sores. And not once did Lacey ever complain about pain, which I don't know is just really unbelievable. And even if someone doesn't complain about pain, if you can see someone's bone. Sheila stated that Lacey had lost her appetite last autumn, so back in 2021. But when the Fletchers, they went on a New Year's trip. When they got back from their trip from New Year's on January 2nd, the day before Lacey died, she listed that she made her half a sandwich and gave her a bag of Cheetos. She stated Lacey ate it. Then, according to Sheila, the mom, Sheila went to sleep on the chair on the living room next to Lacey's couch, near Lacey, near the rotting hole in the sofa. And at around 10 p.m., when she left, fell asleep for the night. Lacey was still alive when she woke up the next morning. Lacey was dead. That's what Sheila Fletcher said, but Sheila Fletcher is a liar in my personal humble opinion. Sheila stated January 2nd, 2022, Lacey ate half a sandwich and a bag of Cheetos. This is not what would be found in Lacey's stomach during the autopsy. All they could find in her stomach was foam and feces, no sand, which no Cheetos. And if Lacey had been sitting there on that couch for 12 years, that means this hell would have begun around 2010, and she would have almost certainly been in pain. Since day one, they said that she's been sitting there for 12 years. They said that it's been years. They didn't give an exact estimate, but the coroner said about 12 years. Wow, now skin exposure to urine and feces is painful and can start stinging within hours. It happens more frequently with infants. It's actually called a diaper rash, and it can get very serious, if not even kill infants. And it's not even done purposely. Most of the times that babies have diaper rashes, it's not abuse, it's typically just because they're very sensitive now. The main symptoms are red rashes on the buttocks. If left unaddressed for too long, it can quickly escalate into a full-body fever, full-body chills, and a full-body rush. Urine and feces contain ammonia. Now, ammonia is very corrosive. If your skin is in contact with ammonia for long periods of time, it can cause irritation and even burns that could have happened within the first few hours of the first day that Lacey had soiled herself on that couch. Now, if a diaper rash is left untreated, the skin starts to swell. It can transform into these rashes that have these white bumps all over. that ooze clear fluid, and then the skin starts to peel, causing these open sores. It's very painful, and if there's still urine or feces that's there to make contact with those open sores, you're at a dangerous risk of infections. Yeast infections might be one. Yeast dermatitis could be another thing. Those are dark red areas of the skin, usually filled with these raised yellow fluid-filled pules. This is likely all happening near the private regions because she was found sitting cross-legged, so she's genuinely sitting in a pile of her urine and feces, which makes everything much more sensitive and painful, cause these are your private parts. Side note, if Lacey still had her menstrual cycle at the beginning of all of this, she may not have due to malnutrition or other reasons, but if she did, that means there would have also been blood rotting into the sofa, and blood attracts flies. Flies would have been attracted to Lacey and her wounds that were all primarily again in her knee like down regions. Also, infections for the private regions are incredibly painful, and that is just the beginning. This is still when everything is treatable, fairly easily painful, but not like life threatening typically even without urine and feces. The high risk of painful infections just sitting or laying in one place is horrendous for the body. Bed sores. Have you heard of bed sores? They're going to be one of the first things to show up. Bed sores occur when there is continuous pressure on parts of the body, usually by sitting or laying in a single position for an extended period of time. So you're cutting off blood supply to that specific area, which causes the surrounding tissue to start dying within 2 hours. The tissue starts dying. Humans are very sensitive because that tissue is not getting enough oxygen, because blood has oxygen in it, and you're not getting blood flowing there, and it can happen in 2 to 3 hours. So you're like, okay, well, why don't I get bed sores when I'm falling asleep? We're constantly moving. Even shuffling like this is moving. So if you're sitting on a chair for 8 hours studying, if you're moving a little bit, it's hard to get bed sores. This stops it from developing. But if you're unable to move around, a bed sore is going to happen because there's a lack of oxygen. Like, it's not preventable. The skin will die, and the bed sore will just look like a red blotch on the skin. So it starts looking like a sunburn, and it feels a little hot to the touch. Kind of like a sunburn, warm. It might even be a little itchy, very similar to a sunburn, but eventually it turns purple, and by that point, if left untreated, the skin will break open, and you're just going to have this painful wound that becomes easily infected, and then it collapses on itself. It's like a crater-sized blister. Some bed sores, I saw pictures on Reddit. I honestly don't know. I should not have gone down that route. There's like dinner plate-sized bed sores, and you can see all the way to the bone, and it's not just skin deep. That's the problem. These bed sores collapse, and they go deeper until you literally have Swiss cheese-like holes on your body. They reach into the muscle all the way to the bone. If you see a really bad picture of a bed sore, you can see muscle, tendons, bones, joints just in a hole in someone's body. It's like an exposed tunnel for people to see inside of you. Once a bed sore develops, you have to treat it and dress it every single day, multiple times a day. It is absolutely horrendous for the patient and the caretaker, and bed sores are very, very, very slow to heal. With bed sores, genuinely prevention is the only key. All you can do is move around. So that's why when you have bedbound patients, one of the first things that caretakers or nurses learn is you have to flip the patient every 2 hours. There's no question about it. And that's why when you go to nursing homes and maybe your grandparents have a bed sore, it's taken so seriously, because when you hear the word bed sore, you're like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. But it's a very clear indicator that there could be abuse happening. Some really bad bed sores take days, months, even years to heal. Some may never heal. They may need surgery. And when it's super serious, bed sores can lead to death. Once they get infected, it leads to sepsis and death. Bed sores cause the death of more than 24,000 people each year. And again, the saddest part is most of the time bed sores are completely preventable. I feel like it's very safe to assume that Lacey went through all of that and more by the time that her body was found. The flesh on Lacey's bottom had been worn away and eaten. It was gone, like she had no thighs, no butt. Her back and butt area It was impossible to tell what part was a human being. Her skin and flesh were so rotten and half-eaten by maggots. There were other areas that maybe looked a little bit more like human skin, but it was completely yellow, which is typically a sign of infected skin. Lacey had bed sores that went all the way down to her bones. Her skin was rotting away from constantly sitting in a mess of feces and acidic urine. She had a severe case of gangrene, which is when your flesh is dead, so the tissue changes from red to black, and then you're left with dead tissue, which is very dangerous because again, you're at risk of infection, which can kill you. The only tiny bit of relief in all of this is hopefully with her injuries being that deep into her skin, hopefully it destroyed her nerve endings. There's a chance that it might not have, but there is a chance that it did, so maybe she had lost feeling in some of these parts of her body around the injury sites. We don't know for sure, but we can only hope that she didn't feel what was slowly happening to her body. 12 long, agonizing, painful years. And it wasn't just the lower part of her body. Her entire backside was a mess of raw, rotten flesh. She was completely covered in raw red blotches, and Lacey's wounds were being cleaned not by her parents, but by maggots. Maggots were crawling in and out of her, consuming her dead flesh, and for this case the maggots did more to help Lacey than her own parents. Like, I know usually we talk about maggots, and it's not in a positive light, but maggots have a very important role in this world. So they eat dead flesh in medical history, and sometimes even today, maggots have been used as a way of helping clean wounds. So maggots, they leave healthy flesh alone, and just feed off of dead flesh, which needs to be cut away anyway, because you're at risk of infection. And in Lacey's case, it seems to have worked to the point that she did not die of sepsis and infection. For the first 12 years, the maggots kept her alive by eating the dead flesh on her wounds, while her parents did nothing for her. In my opinion, we know that Lacey was left with no real food or water in reach, and Lacey on some level was aware enough to know that she needed to eat. Her body seemed to have grasped for anything that she could get, and the sofa foam was the only thing in reach. That and feces, cuz that was what was found in her stomach, not half of a sandwich or Cheetos. That's just the physical trauma of her body. We don't know to what extent and how bad the emotional and mental trauma was. For 12 years, we don't know if this is even the full extent of her physical trauma. Technically, there could have been things that happened to her years ago that wouldn't be present during the autopsy. Now, Dr. Bickham's official report stated Lacey died of sepsis as a result of severe medical neglect, which led to chronic malnutrition, acute starvation. Lacey only weighed 96 lbs at 36 years old, immobility, acute ulcer formation, bone infection, which ultimately led to sepsis and death. And one last thing about Lacey's autopsy, Sheila Fletcher stated she never took Lacey to the doctor because Lacey had never been sick, which, like, let's not even unpack how ridiculous that statement is. Like, we don't even need to go there, but that alone seems to be another lie, or at least a very misguided statement, because Lacey had when she died, most of Clay and Sheila Fletcher's friends did not even know that they had a daughter, but there were people that remembered Lacey, the ones who went to school with her in Slaughter, Louisiana, or the ones that saw her running around the neighborhood when she was younger. They all just assumed that she had grown up, moved out of Slaughter, maybe settled down nearby in Baton Rouge, got married. The ones that knew that the Fletchers had a daughter, they remembered Lacey as being a very friendly kid. She was fun to be around. She had a lot of different interests. She was, like a lot of people, obsessed with Disney. She loved anything Disney World, Disney. In Disney movies, characters, that's her happy place. She would send friends links to videos of Disney. Also Mariah Carey and country music, very interesting mix. But she was someone that just had a very wide range of interest. She's very active. She loved bowling, volleyball. Those were her favorite activities. And everybody's favorite word to describe Lacey was just sweet, like as sweet as can be. She never acted out. She didn't seem like she was creating trouble, or when you have younger kids, there can be certain things that they do or say, or maybe they're acting out, that might indicate that something darker is happening within. Maybe it's happening at the house. There's just these little indications, right? Lacey didn't have any of that. She was a happy-go-lucky kid that licky to have fun. Now, side note, Lacey was diagnosed as autistic when she was younger, and just to give you a bit of context, autism is a neurological condition. It is not an illness, and it's a lot more common than people think. Around 1 in 36 children were diagnosed as autistic in 2023, and it generally affects the way that people communicate for a few reasons, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just a different way of communicating. Many autistic people report feeling their senses a bit more, so what seems like a quiet room for some people can actually be sensory overload for an autistic person. Some autistic people report having excellent memory for facts and very strong problem-solving logical minds, but they might struggle with social cues or small talk, or some autistic people have reported finding it difficult to read facial expressions and eye contact. There has been a lot of stigma and prejudice attached to autism for a very long time, and I think theirs is today, but I think being able to see the world in slightly different ways is a great thing. Different world perception is not necessarily better or worse, it's just different. And I think we need different perceptions. There's a common saying in the autistic community: if you've met one autistic person, then you've met one autistic person, because it's not really something where you can generalize and say, oh, if you have autism, then you feel A, B, C, and D. It's such a wide spectrum that people can be very different from one another with very different needs and different ways of communicating, so keep that in mind. Because Lacey's parents would often tell people, yeah, Lacey's just super quiet and withdrawn, and she doesn't like socializing, but her friends at school were so confused. They're like, are we talking about the same girl right now? Are we talking about the same Lacey? I mean, sure, I guess she's kind of quiet compared to like class clown, but she would go out of her way to welcome people and try to build connections. I mean, she's very opinionated and very passionate about a lot of things. She loved new experiences, and she loved a change in her routine. So I don't know what the parents are saying to a lot of Lacey's childhood friends. It felt like her parents didn't even know who she was. And side note, her parents were allegedly wishy-washy with her diagnosis. Sometimes they would state that Lacey had Aspira syndrome, which is no longer used as a diagnosis anymore. By the way, sometimes they would describe her autism as, quote, mild. Other times they would describe it as, quote, severe, which, side note, from when I've been told the better verbiage to describe autism is high or low support needs, but these are allegedly the verbiage that Lacey's parents used. So this is not me describing Lacey. Lacey's Dr. Bickham. Dr. Bickham, the one that went to Lacey Fletcher's home to find her, was her primary care physician when she was younger. While he was friendly with the Fletchers, like he knew the Fletchers, he was their doctor. He's also the town coroner, small town. Yeah, Dr. Bickham would even describe her diagnosis as, quote, severe autism and social anxiety. But again, this just doesn't really match the way that Lacey's friends describe her, so it's confusing. And just to clarify, Lacey did have unique interests, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with autism, like just flat out. So one of Lacey's old classmates would say, yeah, I saw her around 15 years ago, and she was definitely different from other kids her age.